Former Zambian President Edgar Lungu is dead, but the questions aren't. From the streets of Lusaka to the corridors of power, one question echoes: who wanted him gone? Rumors of a dangerous cartel, secret political deals, and hidden agendas are now in the spotlight. In this investigation, we follow the trail of power, betrayal, and silence to uncover what really happened. Stay with us, because the truth might be more dangerous than the death itself. The death of former President Edgar Chagwa Lungu has sparked one of the biggest political mysteries in Zambia's history. As speculation grows, powerful names and organizations are being linked to a shadowy cartel that may have wanted him eliminated. In this documentary, InspirAfrica official investigates the political enemies Edgar Lungu made before his death, what the cartel really is, and who's part of it, why the truth about his death may never reach the public, the dangerous connections between politics, money, and power. Watch till the end as we expose shocking details hidden from the headlines. Subscribe to InspirAfrica Official for exclusive African political investigations and breaking news. Who wanted Edgar Lungu dead? The question of who might have wanted former Zambian President Edgar Lungu dead is steeped in the contentious political landscape of Zambia, marked by deep-seated rivalries, allegations of corruption, and struggles for power. Edgar Lungu, who served as Zambia's sixth president from 2015 to 2021, was a polarizing figure. His presidency was characterized by ambitious infrastructure projects, economic challenges, and accusations of authoritarianism, which created both ardent supporters and fierce adversaries. His death on June 5, 2025, at the age of 68 in a South African hospital sparked widespread speculation, fueled by Zambia's history of political intrigue and the bitter feud between Lungu and his successor, President Hakainde Hichilema. Lungu's political enemies, particularly those aligned with Hichilema's United Party for National Development (UPND), had long-standing tensions with him. During his presidency, Lungu's administration was accused of targeting opposition figures, including Hichilema, who was arrested in 2017 on treason charges for allegedly failing to yield to Lungu's motorcade. This incident, among others, cemented a personal and political animosity that persisted after Hichilema's landslide victory over Lungu in the 2021 election. Lungu's subsequent return to politics, despite a constitutional court ruling barring him from running again, kept him in the crosshairs of the UPND government, which stripped him of retirement benefits and accused him of political activism. Beyond political rivals, allegations of a shadowy cartel in Zambian politics, reportedly involving powerful business and political figures, have surfaced in connection with Lungu's tenure and death. A 2019 report by the Environmental Investigation Agency (EIA) accused Lungu, his daughter Tassila, and associates of facilitating the illegal trade of mucula rosewood, suggesting a network of corruption that enriched elites while plundering Zambia's resources. These allegations, though denied by Lungu as fake news, fueled perceptions of a corrupt power structure that could have had motives to silence him, especially if he posed a threat to expose such networks upon his political comeback. Rumors also point to external actors, including foreign powers or business interests tied to Zambia's resource wealth, particularly its copper and timber industries. Lungu's close ties with Chinese investors during his presidency, which led to significant infrastructure development but also ballooned national debt, created friction with Western donors like the United States and the International Monetary Fund (IMF). These strained relations might have positioned Lungu as a liability to certain international stakeholders. However, no concrete evidence links any specific group or individual to a desire for his death, and much of the speculation arises from Zambia's polarized political climate and the lack of transparency surrounding his final days. The question of who wanted Lungu dead remains unanswered definitively, as it is tangled in a web of political vendettas, economic interests, and unverified claims. The absence of clear evidence and the government's handling of his death have only deepened public suspicion, setting the stage for the broader narrative of intrigue and mistrust. The day Lungu died. Official story versus rumors. Edgar Lungu died on June 5, 2025 at Mediclinic Medforum in Pretoria, South Africa, following cardiac complications from a surgical procedure. The official announcement came from his daughter, Tassila Lungu Mwansa, a Zambian lawmaker, in a video posted on the Patriotic Front (PF) party's Facebook page. She stated that Lungu had been under medical supervision for an undisclosed illness in recent weeks and passed away at 6 o'clock Greenwich Mean Time. The PF corroborated this, noting he was receiving specialized treatment. The Zambian government declared a 7-day national mourning period, and flags were flown at half-mast, with Mozambique also declaring 3 days of mourning. The official narrative is straightforward. Lungu, aged 68, had been battling health issues, was admitted to a South African hospital under a pseudonym, raising questions about his identity during treatment, and succumbed to complications during surgery. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa and Kenyan President William Ruto expressed condolences, emphasizing Lungu's regional influence and leadership. The Zambian government, led by President Hichilema, initially pushed for a state funeral in Lusaka, suggesting a unified national mourning process. However, rumors and alternative narratives quickly emerged, fueled by the lack of transparency and the political context. The PF and Lungu's family alleged that he had been banned from leaving Zambia for medical treatment earlier, implying that timely access to care might have saved his life. The government, through Information Minister Cornelius Mwitwa, denied any travel ban, dismissing the claims as politically motivated. A Zambian Observer article questioned the absence of Lungu's body at memorial services in South Africa, noting that neither family members nor the public had seen it, leading to speculation that he might not be dead or that the circumstances of his death were being concealed. Social media platforms, particularly WhatsApp and X, amplified conspiracy theories. Some posts suggested Lungu's death was staged as part of a Plan B to evade political or legal pressures, citing his use of different passports or the lack of hospital records under his name. Others claimed Zambian authorities intimidated hospital staff to repatriate his body without family consent, raising suspicions of a cover-up. The absence of a public viewing of Lungu's body, coupled with the family's refusal to repatriate it for a state funeral, intensified these rumors. Some even speculated that Hichilema's government, wary of Lungu's political influence, had motives to obscure the truth. The discrepancy between the official account and rumors highlights Zambia's polarized political environment and distrust in institutions. The government's insistence on controlling funeral arrangements, contrasted with the family's resistance, fed narratives of political vengeance. Without verifiable evidence, such as a public autopsy or hospital records, these rumors persist, underscoring the challenge of establishing truth in a climate of suspicion. The rise of the cartel in Zambian politics. The term cartel in Zambian politics refers to an alleged network of influential figures, politicians, businesspeople, and traditional leaders accused of exploiting state resources for personal gain. The concept gained prominence in 2019 with the Environmental Investigation Agency's EIA report Mukula Cartel, which implicated Lungu, his daughter Tassila, Justice Minister Given Labinda, and others in the illegal trafficking of Mukula rosewood, a valuable and endangered timber species. The report alleged that this cartel operated with high-level corruption, bypassing national bans on Mukula harvesting and export through bribes and political influence, with an estimated $7.5 million in illicit payments annually. The Mukula Cartel report painted a picture of systemic corruption, claiming that Lungu and his associates used government agencies to facilitate the trade, with special export permits allegedly traded for political loyalty. A Chinese trafficker reportedly donated $40,000 to Lungu's re-election campaign, and the PF Central Committee was described as a partner in these operations. Lungu dismissed these allegations as fake news, urging journalists to rise above misinformation, but critics argued that his refusal to address the claims transparently suggested complicity. The rise of this alleged cartel reflects broader issues in Zambian politics, where resource wealth, particularly in copper, timber, and minerals, has long been a battleground for elite enrichment. During Lungu's presidency, Zambia's economy struggled with rising debt, partly due to Chinese-backed infrastructure projects, which critics argued benefited a select few rather than the nation. The cartel narrative gained traction as a symbol of governance failures, with Lungu's administration accused of fostering a culture of impunity where political loyalty trumped accountability. The cartel's influence extended beyond Lungu's tenure. After his 2021 election loss, Hichilema's government launched an anti-corruption crusade targeting PF affiliates, including Lungu's wife Esther and their children, who faced charges of theft and corruption. These actions were seen by some as efforts to dismantle the cartel, but others viewed them as political retribution, further polarizing the political landscape. The cartel's alleged persistence suggests a deeply entrenched network that transcends individual leaders, complicating efforts to reform Zambia's governance. Public perception of the cartel is mixed. Supporters of Lungu and the PF dismiss the allegations as opposition propaganda, while critics argue that the lack of accountability during Lungu's presidency allowed such networks to flourish. The Mukula Cartel report remains a flashpoint, symbolizing the intersection of politics, corruption, and resource exploitation in Zambia, and its shadow looms over discussions of Lungu's death and legacy. Lungu's political enemies and conflicts. Edgar Lungu's political career was marked by intense conflicts with rivals, particularly Hakainde Hichilema, whose rivalry defined Zambia's political landscape for over a decade. The animosity began during Lungu's presidency, 2015 to 2021, when Hichilema, then the opposition leader, faced repeated arrests, 17 in total, including a high-profile 2017 detention on treason charges for allegedly endangering Lungu's life by not yielding to his motorcade. Hichilema described his imprisonment as degrading, blaming Lungu personally for the inhumane conditions. This incident deepened their personal and political enmity, with Hichilema's United Party for National Development (UPND) accusing Lungu of authoritarian tactics to suppress opposition. Lungu's conflicts were not limited to Hichilema. His administration faced criticism from human rights advocates and Western donors for eroding press and political freedoms. Emergency powers were used to quell unrest, and Lungu's supporters were accused of thuggery, which he was perceived to tolerate. His anti-LGBT rhetoric in 2019, where he argued that such practices were unnatural, strained relations with Western governments, leading to the withdrawal of the U.S. ambassador in 2020. The IMF PF also recalled its resident representative, reflecting economic and diplomatic tensions over Lungu's governance. Within the PF, Lungu faced intra-party struggles, particularly after his 2021 election loss. His attempt to return to frontline politics in 2023, despite retiring, led to tensions with acting PF President Given Labinda and others vying for leadership. The Constitutional Court's ruling barring him from running again, citing his 2 prior terms, was seen by some as influenced by Hichilema's administration, which had removed justices who previously ruled against him. This decision further alienated Lungu's base, who viewed it as a targeted effort to neutralize his influence. Lungu also clashed with the Zambian public and media over economic challenges. His presidency saw Zambia default on its international debt in 2020, amid rising unemployment and economic hardship, which fueled disillusionment. His critics, including civil society and opposition-aligned media, accused him of prioritizing loyalty over competence, fostering a culture of corruption that enriched his allies. The Mukula cartel allegations intensified these conflicts, positioning Lungu as a symbol of elite capture against reformist forces. After losing power, Lungu accused Hichilema's government of harassment, including police searches of his home and restrictions on his movements, such as barring him from jogging in public or traveling abroad. The government denied these claims, but they reinforced Lungu's narrative of being a persecuted former leader. These conflicts, rooted in personal grudges, policy disputes, and power struggles, shaped the volatile context of his death and the subsequent funeral disputes. The cartel's alleged role in his final days. The alleged cartel in Zambian politics, as outlined in the Mukula cartel report, has been speculatively linked to Lungu's final days, though evidence remains circumstantial. The narrative suggests that this network of political and business elites, allegedly involved in illegal resource exploitation, might have viewed Lungu as a liability or asset depending on their interests. His death in South Africa, under unclear circumstances, and the subsequent disputes over his body's repatriation have fueled theories that the cartel, or factions within it, played a role in his demise or the handling of his death. One theory posits that Lungu's knowledge of the cartel's operations, gained during his presidency, made him a potential threat, especially as he attempted a political comeback. The Mukula cartel report named Lungu, his daughter Tassila, and key allies like Given Labinda as central figures in the illegal timber trade, suggesting they profited from corrupt networks. If Lungu intended to leverage this knowledge for political leverage or to deflect Hichilema's anti-corruption campaign, he could have been targeted to prevent disclosures. However, no direct evidence supports this, and such claims are largely speculative, amplified by social media and opposition-aligned outlets. Another angle suggests that the cartel's influence persisted in the funeral disputes. The Lungu family's refusal to repatriate his body for a state funeral, citing his wish that Hichilema not be involved, may reflect distrust in the government's motives, possibly fearing manipulation by cartel-linked figures within or outside the administration. The Zambian government's legal action to block the burial in South Africa, including demands to authenticate Lungu's body, was seen by some as an attempt to control the narrative, potentially to obscure cartel-related secrets. Conversely, the PF and Lungu's family might have been aligned with cartel elements, resisting repatriation to protect their own interests or to maintain control over Lungu's legacy. The presence of PF leaders in South Africa during memorial services and their insistence on a private burial suggests a coordinated effort to defy the government, possibly backed by influential figures with stakes in the cartel's operations. The lack of transparency around Lungu's hospital admission under a pseudonym and the absence of his body at memorial services further stoke suspicions. Some speculate that cartel figures, possibly with international connections, influenced the hospital's handling of his case to obscure the cause of death. However, these claims lack corroboration, and the government's denial of any travel ban or interference undermines narratives of deliberate neglect or foul play. The cartel's alleged role remains a shadowy hypothesis, entangled in Zambia's broader political and economic struggles, with no definitive proof tying it to Lungu's death. Why the truth may never come out. The truth about Edgar Lungu's death and the circumstances surrounding it may remain elusive due to a combination of political polarization, institutional opacity, and the complexities of international jurisdiction. Several factors contribute to this uncertainty. Lack of transparency in medical records. Lungu's admission to a South African hospital under a pseudonym raises questions about the accuracy of hospital records and the cause of his death. The absence of a public autopsy or detailed medical report, coupled with the family's control over his body, limits access to verifiable information. Political polarization. The deep rift between the PF and UPND, exacerbated by Lungu and Hichilema's personal feud, has politicized the narrative around his death. Both sides have incentives to shape the story to their advantage. PF to portray Lungu as a martyr, and UPND to dismiss conspiracy theories as opposition propaganda. This polarization stifles objective investigation. Legal and jurisdictional challenges. Lungu's death in South Africa complicates matters, as Zambian authorities have limited control over investigations there. The Pretoria High Court's intervention to halt his burial, following a Zambian government request, highlights the diplomatic and legal tensions, but no clear mechanism exists for a joint investigation. Media and social media dynamics. Zambia's 2025 Cybersecurity Act, which grants authorities powers to restrict speech speech deemed a threat to law and order may suppress open discussion of Lungu's death. Social media platforms like X have been rife with rumors, but the threat of legal repercussions discourages journalists and citizens from pursuing sensitive inquiries. Cartel influence and corruption. If the alleged cartel exists, its influence within Zambia's political and economic spheres could obstruct efforts to uncover the truth. The Mukula cartel report suggests a network capable of manipulating state institutions, which could extend to silencing investigations or controlling narratives. Families' control over narrative. The Lungu family's refusal to repatriate his body and their insistence on a private burial in South Africa limit public access to evidence. Their distrust in the Zambian government, rooted in Lungu's dying wish to exclude Hichilema, suggests they may withhold information to protect his legacy or avoid political exploitation. Historical precedent. Zambia has a history of unresolved controversies surrounding leaders' deaths, such as the disputes over Kenneth Konda's burial in 2021. The lack of clear legal frameworks for handling former presidents' funerals or investigations into their deaths perpetuates ambiguity. These factors create a perfect storm of obfuscation where political motives, legal barriers, and institutional weaknesses converge to obscure the truth. Without an independent investigation, public trust will continue to erode, leaving Lungu's death as a flashpoint for speculation and division. Public reaction and political fallout. The public reaction to Edgar Lungu's death was a mix of grief, confusion, and outrage, reflecting his polarizing legacy and the contentious circumstances of his passing. As a former president who led Zambia through economic turmoil and political strife, Lungu retained a loyal following, particularly among PF supporters and those who valued his infrastructure projects and accessibility to ordinary Zambians. His death shocked the nation, with radio stations playing gospel music and citizens expressing genuine sorrow, given Zambia's Christian identity and cultural emphasis on mourning. However, the funeral disputes quickly overshadowed national mourning. The government's push for a state funeral at Embassy Park in Lusaka clashed with the Lungu family's desire for a private burial in South Africa, leading to widespread confusion about how to honor the former president. The PF directed mourners to its headquarters, while the government designated a state-owned lodge, creating parallel mourning venues that deepened political divisions. Social media platforms, particularly WhatsApp and X, became battlegrounds for competing narratives, with some praising Lungu's legacy and others questioning the government's handling of his death. The political fallout was significant. The PF accused the Hichilema administration of politicizing Lungu's death, pointing to the legal action in South Africa to block his burial as evidence of vindictiveness. Hichilema's decision to end the national mourning period early, citing the family's refusal to repatriate the body, was seen by PF supporters as disrespectful, further inflaming tensions. The government's demand to authenticate Lungu's body was particularly controversial, with critics like Brian Matambo calling it an insult to a former head of state and a sign of political vengeance. The PF seized the opportunity to rally its base, holding multiple press conferences and positioning Lungu's death as a rallying cry for opposition unity. The battle for PF leadership intensified, with figures like Given Lubinda distancing themselves from government cooperation, signaling a power struggle within the party. Meanwhile, Hichilema's administration faced accusations of mishandling a unifying moment, damaging its image as a reformist government. Constitutional lawyer John Sangwa highlighted the need for legal clarity on presidential funerals, reflecting broader public frustration with the chaos. Internationally, the saga drew attention to Zambia's political volatility, South Africa's role in hosting Lungu's treatment and funeral arrangements, and its government's support for the family's wishes underscored diplomatic sensitivities. The controversy also reignited debates about Lungu's legacy, with supporters lauding his infrastructure achievements and critics pointing to economic mismanagement and authoritarian tendencies. The fallout risks further polarizing Zambia, with Lungu's death becoming a symbol of unresolved tensions rather than a moment of national unity. Conclusion: the danger of asking questions. Asking questions about Edgar Lungu's death is fraught with danger due to Zambia's polarized political climate, the threat of legal repercussions, and the potential to uncover uncomfortable truths about power and corruption. The lack of transparency surrounding his death, compounded by the use of a pseudonym, the absence of a public body viewing, and the family's distrust of the government, invites speculation but also exposes those who probe too deeply to risks. The 2025 Cybersecurity Act empowers the government to curb speech deemed destabilizing, creating a chilling effect on journalists and citizens seeking answers. The Mukula cartel allegations and the broader narrative of elite corruption suggest that powerful interests may have motives to suppress inquiries. If Lungu's death involved foul play or negligence, as some rumors suggest, those implicated could include influential figures within or beyond Zambia's borders. Pursuing such questions could lead to legal harassment, as seen in the government's actions against Lungu's family, or even physical threats, given reports of hospital staff intimidation. Moreover, the political fallout from Lungu's death demonstrates the fragility of Zambia's democratic institutions. Questioning the official narrative risks deepening divisions between PF and UPND supporters, potentially inciting unrest in a country already grappling with economic challenges. The government's heavy-handed response, including lawsuits and demands for body authentication, signals an intolerance for dissent that could deter truth-seeking. Yet, the danger of asking questions is is matched by the necessity of doing so. Without clarity, Lungu's death will remain a source of division, undermining public trust and democratic stability. The absence of an independent investigation or legal framework for handling such cases perpetuates a cycle of suspicion and impunity. Ultimately, the danger lies not only in asking questions, but in the silence that follows when answers are withheld, leaving Zambia to grapple with a legacy of mistrust and unresolved grievances.